Hello and welcome to our tips and tricks session. We've split ourselves into two sections, so I will take you through sketch, part and user interface, and Alex will take us through drawings and assemblies in a separate video. We'll start with the home screen, and our first minor tip is that you can use the advanced button to get to the more traditional templates window. So if you do need to access a different template, this is the way to do it. No need to close that window and use File New. We can get to it from the home screen. I'm just going to clean my interface up a little bit. So we're not actually going to use the command manager at all for any of the tools we're going to be using in SOLIDWORKS. So we've created ourselves a very nice big graphics area to work with. If you select anything in the feature tree, we get this flyout menu, which is context sensitive, but also fully customizable. So if we go into this, we can add any commands to that flyout that we want to. So there I've just added the Extrude flyout, and if we reselect that plane, we can see the Extrude tool available and its drop down menu is available to us too. We'll start a sketch from the flyout, and I've pressed the S key on my keyboard to access the sketch shortcuts. I've chosen a circle here, and there are two types available to us. I can actually toggle between them using the A key on the keyboard, which can be quite handy if you select the wrong one. So we don't need to move to the property manager to change the type. After placing the circle, if we hold down the shift key, any entities that you are drawing will snap to a grid, the values for which are set within the options menu and is by default set to 25mm. We'll use the S key again and select Smart Dimension to constrain the circle. If we position that at a vertical orientation and give it a value, we can alter its position afterwards. If you right click on the dimension, you can set the display to diameter, and if you grab the little ball above the dimension, we can rotate and reposition it. We'll use the S key again to access the line tool, and in this case I have a solid line when I wanted a construction line. Not to worry, if I hit the tab it puts me onto the property manager on the left hand side, and then I can hit C and this will toggle a construction line on for me. Again, we're trying to highlight how we can reduce the amount of mouse movement required to increase efficiency. I'll just sketch out some additional lines and then use the S key again to select the Smart Dimension tool and use that to constrain our vertical line at 69mm. Moving on from there, I need to add some additional horizontal lines onto my sketch, and using the normal click, click, double click to exit the line command. If you just want a single line, there is another way to approach this, which we'll discuss in a moment, but before that I want to remove the two I have just created. In SOLIDWORKS there are two styles of box select that we can use. The first one is a crossing from left to right, which selects everything inside the box, as long as the full entity is within that box. We can also use a right to left crossing window select, which will then select anything the box crosses. So depending on how you want to select entities, just be aware of the two styles so you can select what you want efficiently. Another way to draw lines is to click and hold the left mouse button and drag, and then you get a single line only. So instead of having that multi-line behaviour, we just get a single line. It's useful to know the difference between the two methods so you can quickly create the line that you want. I'm just going to finish off this sketch by drawing a centre line and two vertical lines at either side. I'll tidy this up by adding the dimensions that I need, as it's always important to have a fully defined sketch. On this third dimension, if I place the dimension down, you'll see in the dimension modify box that there is a scroll wheel. If you move along this, you'll see the dimension changes at specific increments. Mine is set to the default 10mm. If you hold down the Alt key, you will get 1mm increments, so it will divide the default value by 10. And if you hold down the Control key, it will multiply by 10, giving you 100mm increments. So you can make rapid changes to your dimensions by using the scroll wheel if you want to. We'll set our dimension to 31.5. F on your keyboard will zoom to fit. We can also drag sketch entities around and it will automatically create sketch relations as we go. I would like to create a symmetric relation, so I'm holding down the Control key and selecting the three lines. The symmetric relation will appear as long as you have two lines and a construction line selected, and you can do this in any order. We'll tidy that up by dimensioning across the two at 76mm. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is the trim tool. Most of us will be familiar with this, and more specifically power trim. We'll just press and hold the left mouse button and drag across entities and it will trim back to the closest. New for 2019 are the two options keep trimmed entities as construction and ignore trimming of construction geometry. Both very useful options. You can turn these on from the right click menu, or alternatively you can toggle them on from the property manager. Effectively what they will do is allow for easier trimming on complicated sketches. So here when I trim the lines it converts them to construction geometry and also ignores and doesn't trim if I run over a construction line. It's worth having a look at these options if you haven't noticed them before. To exit any command you can hit the D key on the keyboard and it will bring the OK button to the end of your mouse, saving a bit of mouse travel. Next we'll use offset, again selecting it from the S key, and you can see the default behaviour is to select a chain of entities. If you look closely at the cursor you'll see it displays the symbol of a mouse with the right mouse button showing an enter icon. If we move the mouse you'll see that icon disappears, and if we right click we can access the normal right click menu, allowing me to toggle off the select chain setting and then select my own chain on screen. I also want to cap the ends with some straight lines, which is an option within the offset command. However, I do need to select this from the property manager as it isn't available on the right click menu. Using the D key I can OK the menu and then just modify the dimension on screen. We can then exit the sketch using the D key too. Pre-selection is important in SOLIDWORKS, and you can see that my sketch is pre-selected as it appears in blue. If I have a multi-contour sketch pre-selected and I start the Extrude tool, it allows me to go straight into the contour selector area of the Extrude tool. So I pick on screen the contours of the sketch I want to extrude. We'll accept the default value and exit the Extrude command. There are a few more contours that I want to extrude on this sketch, so going back to the feature tree I can show my sketch, and I'm going to pre-select it and start the Extrude tool from the S key. As soon as I get into the Extrude tool the dimension box is active, so I'm going to type in the value I want to apply, meaning I don't need to navigate to that box, and then I'm going to choose the contour I want to extrude and right click for enter. We'll do the same operation again, pre-select the sketch, start the Extrude tool from the S key, fill in the dimension that we want, which is 63.5, and then choose the contour and right click for enter. So we can move very quickly through the property managers once we understand what the default behaviour is. Again here we'll fill in a value of 50, choose the two outer contours and right click for enter. Now you don't need to use the S key to start the Extrude tool. You can do it in a slightly different way. What I'm showing you here is mouse gestures, and I've added hide sketches onto my mouse gestures. So if I drag down, I can select hide sketches, as we don't need to see that sketch anymore. F is zoom to fit as we've seen before. Another display option I like is available on the right click menu, and that's rotate about scene floor. It gives a much nicer way of rotating the model. There's one final extrude that I'd like to create, so I'm going to show the sketches again, and if I pre-select the sketch, because I've customized the shortcut menu at the start to include the extrude command, I can select it directly from here. We'll fill in 3mm, choose our contour and use right click for enter. Finally we'll use our mouse gestures to hide sketches. Moving on from there, I have a few other tips and tricks I'd like to highlight. If I select an edge on my model, the context sensitive menu appears and you'll see mine has been customized to include a few extra commands. What I'd like to do is add a chamfer to this edge, so I'm going to choose the chamfer tool directly from the flyout, and I'd like to use a face-to-face chamfer here. What I'm highlighting is that you can move through the property managers from the graphics area. If I select the first face, then right click on my mouse, the property manager moves me to the next box, making selection a little faster. I'd like to apply a hold line control, which I need to select from the drop down. Then I can choose the two edges to define my chamfer size, rather than inputting a dimension. Enter as repeat the last command, which is handy if you need to apply the same operation to another area of the model, like we do here. Just to highlight the functionality the hold line gives us, I can use Instant 3D and drag the dimension around so we can see it adjust on screen. So it maintains the chamfer at the overall length of the boss rather than it being controlled by a dimension. I'm going to use the flyout toolbar to start the fillet command and add 2 onto the front corners. Key in a dimension and use the D key to bring the OK button into the graphics area. Now what I'd like to do is draw a sketch on the bottom face to match what we have on the back face, but I can't get to the bottom face without rotating the model. So I've added the sketch tool onto my S key, and if I start it, I can then right click on the top face and use Select Other, allowing me to select the bottom face of the model. So now I'm sketching on that underside face. If I right click on this edge here and choose Select Tangency, which will select the tangent loop of edges, and then use my S key to select offset entities and key in 3mm, the whole process can be really quick. If I click outside when I'm in the offset command, it will offset outside. I'll close that loop with a single line from point to point. Once I've added that line, I can use the D key again to say OK and exit the sketch. The sketch is pre-selected even though they're not visible, so I can start the extrude command here and it will choose the right sketch. My extrude is defaulting to a downwards direction, but right clicking on screen I can reverse the direction. Then I can use right click to enter, and I've created that extrude without really having to interact with the property manager at all. I'd like to create a little cutout in this area, so I'm going to start a new sketch on this small face here. I can't select it easily, so I can press the G key and start the magnifying glass, and then use the flyout to start a new sketch. I want to reuse this edge, so I'm going to convert that, and I'd like to use a tool called Jog, which isn't on my toolbar, and I don't really want to go and find it. If you click S, we get our shortcut menu, but it also puts our cursor in the command search box in the top right. So if I type in Jog and press enter, it will start the Jog tool for me. If I click anywhere on that line, it will jog the line out to where I want it to be. We'll just place it roughly down for now. I can clean this up by removing the entities that I don't want. So I'm just going to use a Windows select to grab this other line at the bottom, but I've accidentally got an extra line. Not to worry, if we hold down Control and click an entity that's selected, it will deselect it. Next I'm going to pick a fixed point and use the right click option to fully define sketch. I know all my settings are OK, so I can use the D key to bring the OK key to the middle of my screen and accept that, and it will fully define my sketch for me. I'm going to adjust some of the values to suit the size I would like that to be. Now what we've got here is an open contour, so it's a sketch that isn't fully closed, but we can still use that for a cut feature. So if I exit my sketch using the D key, the sketch is still pre-selected. Press the S key, I can select the extrude cut feature. An open contour cut always defaults to a through all end condition, but in a single direction. So if I want to change that, I can right click and select through all in both directions, and my open contour is going to cut through my entire model, so I don't need to worry about closing sketches if I don't need to. So moving on from there, I'd like to add some fillets to the model. So again, the fillet tool is available from the flyout, so we're going to pick an edge, add a size, then choose any additional edges that we want to fillet. What I'd like to do is use a multiple radius fillet, so that option is a tick box in the property manager. But if I right click, I can access it from the right click menu. I can then go into each of the pop outs that appear and type in the new dimension values that I'd like to use. Let's say I want a couple of edges at 12.7 and this edge at the bottom wants to be 3mm. So again, I'm just going to use the flyout to change the value, and then the next fillet I apply will be the value that I have just set. If the D key doesn't give you the OK menu, you can always right click on screen and select OK from that menu instead. The next thing I'd like to do is create a hole on this face. Now I mentioned earlier about the toolbars being customizable. Let's take a look at how we do that. So firstly, I'm just going to remove some of the customization I have already applied, by dragging and dropping the commands off the flyout. Then I'm going to look through all the tools that I can add and drag the hole wizard directly onto that flyout. So if I just say OK to that menu and then click on this face, I can start a hole wizard feature directly from the flyout. What I actually want to use is an advanced hole, not a hole wizard feature, which is available on the flyouts toolbar. So make sure if you want to add flyout toolbars that you are on the correct section of the menu and drag that flyout toolbar on, which in our case is hole wizard. Then what will happen is you will get the drop down arrow at the end of the icon, which will give you access to those extra tools. So here we're going to start an advanced hole. If you're not aware of advanced hole, it was introduced a few releases ago and is a great way to build up complicated hole structures or multi-step holes. We just add the type of hole we want in sequence and build up our hole. For speed, I'm actually going to use a favourite and then choose a position. But advanced hole is a fast way to create these complicated multi-step holes. Again, I'll just use the D key to exit the tool. I'm just going to access a section view on the right plane to take a look at that hole in a bit more detail. I'd like to chamfer each of the edges. To do this, I'm just going to show you a little trick. If I pre-select the feature and then start the chamfer tool, what I should see is it chamfer all those edges. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for the chamfer tool. However, if we pre-select the feature and use the fillet tool, it will work. So we'll key in the value of 0.5mm and it picks all the edges of the feature for me, and we'll add that on. Then what we can do is edit the fillet feature and convert the fillet to a chamfer. So a little bit of a workaround, but maybe useful for some situations where you have to select multiple edges. We can exit section views by right-clicking in the graphics area and deselect section view. Now I think we've talked about the design library a number of times over the years and about how we can create them to speed up feature creation. But what I want to mention this time is that there's actually quite a wide range of standard ones available that we can use out of the box. So selecting this hole pattern, I just need to drag and drop it onto my model and then choose a configuration to use. 5 holes on a particular PCD and then locate it with a circular edge. So a lot of these have many configurations built into them, so it's worth having a look at these to see if any suit typical features that you create on a daily basis, which will save you having to create these library features yourself. So again, with this final one, we'll just select a configuration and an edge and place the feature down. We've talked a little about how we customize toolbars already, but I want to talk a bit more about how to do it. I'd like to customize my feature-based shortcut toolbar by adding some more flyout toolbars on. So I'm going to add 2 more here. Firstly, I'll drag the weldment one on, and I'm also going to drag the surfacing one on as well. If we go back into the graphics area and click S, we can see both of the toolbars are available. Because they are flyout toolbars, all the other tools are available. What's really useful is that we can customize what appears on these flyouts. To do this, we first need to turn on the flyout toolbar itself, which will appear on screen. Then we need to customize that. Simply select the extra commands you want to add and drag them onto that toolbar. I'll add dome, freeform, deform, indent and flex. Once you've done that, just close the toolbar down, which effectively saves it. Then if I go back onto my S key, we can see all those additional commands are now available on my flyout. So we can get quite creative in how we customize the S key and the flyouts. Finally, I want to finish off by using the hole wizard feature. And I really just wanted to point out here that if you don't pre-select a face when you start the hole wizard tool, it will give you a prompt to use a 3D sketch. If we do use a 3D sketch, we can add holes across multiple faces easily. So if you do need to do something like this, you don't need more than one hole wizard feature to achieve it. It even allows the selection of cylindrical faces too. To finish off, we'll use either the D key or the right click menu to accept the command. Okay, that brings us to the end of the part, feature and user interface tips and tricks. Please be sure to watch our next video, which is Alex taking us through assembly and drawing tips. I've summarised the tips I've been through today and they should be on screen now. Thanks again for watching.